Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Host the ultimate backyard barbecue with Whole Foods Market. It's the hot grill summer event through July 16th with sizzling sales on no antibiotics ever boneless beef ribeye steak and beef New York strip steak. Plus, check out sales on sustainable wild-caught Alaska sockeye salmon, organic strawberries, and more. In a hurry? Choose grab-and-go favorites like picnic salads and sushi, plus plenty of cooler-friendly beverages. Make it a hot grill summer at Whole Foods Market.
One of their scariest examples of their power is I discovered they have this rule, 30%, that if you're a supplier to Walmart, no more than 30% of your sales can come from Walmart. Basically wants you on life support, but doesn't want to kill you.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of Ranching Reboot, the podcast that reboots your thinking about farming, ranching, food systems, and the people that operate them. Here's your host, Brian Alexander.
Hey gang, I hope you're having a great week. This season of Ranching Reboot is sponsored by Land Trust, the Recreation Access Network. Look, I know a lot of y'all are already getting good money for deer leases and whatnot. For those of us that aren't and would like to concessionize a few more things on the farm or ranch, Land Trust can get it listed and advertised for you. Guys, the public is hungry to reconnect with agriculture and the outdoors, so go to www.landtrust.com today or click on the link in the show notes to get started. That's www.landtrust.com. As you already know, Ranching Reboot is available in video form on Spotify and many other podcast players. But did you know that you can also watch Ranching Reboot on YouTube? That's right. I've been posting all the podcasts since the beginning of the year to YouTube. If you're wondering about the back catalog of episodes, I'll eventually get those on YouTube as well. You can find them on my Red Hills Rancher channel on YouTube. Look for the Ranching Reboot podcast tab. Hey, my guest this week is Austin Frerick. Austin is an expert on agricultural and antitrust policy. During the 2020 presidential campaign, he advised candidates Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Pete Buttigieg on agricultural policy before ultimately serving as co-chair of the Biden campaign's Agricultural Antitrust Policy Committee. He is a fellow of the Thurman Arnold Project at Yale University, an initiative that brings together faculty, students, and scholars to collaborate on research-related competition policy and antitrust enforcement. He also serves on the board of directors for Common Good Iowa and the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project. In 2022, The Advocate named him a champion of the people. He recently published his debut book, Barons: Money, Power, and the Corruption of America's Food Industry, which profiles a series of powerful magnates to illustrate the concentration of power in America's food system. Austin's here to discuss the book and whatever else comes up. You know how it goes. This is Ranching Reboots. Here we go. Austin, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Brian.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join me. I know you're a busy guy. I read your book last week. Well, I didn't read it. I listened to it on Audible, and I thought it was really great. So why don't you just kind of give us maybe a brief overview of the book?
Yeah, so my book is about 7 different robber barons in the food system. And, I have everything from a berry baron to a grocery baron to a hog baron. But the goal of each baron is to use them to tell these bigger stories. Like Cargill's my grain baron. And that chapter to me is really about the Farm Bill. How the Farm Bill started off as an aid to family farms, and now it's designed for Wall Street at the expense of farmers, eaters, workers, and all that kind of stuff. Because part of it, to me, wanting to write this book was I just didn't feel like there was anything out there that kind of explained how these structures work. My dad really ingrained in me when I was young that people purposely make things complex to keep you out. And so I want to kind of show people, oh, this stuff isn't that complex. And there was a lot of just corporate capture, regulatory shenanigans going on.
Well, that's why lawyers exist. They exist to give themselves a job. I mean, to write stuff that's just complicated enough where you got to hire another one to read it back to you.
Yeah, and like the language, even like in the monopoly world, they use a phrase called consumer welfare standard to decide if companies should buy each other. And it's just like these are words that sound smart, but they don't actually say anything.
More made up corporate words. Yeah, I've heard some of those before. So, I mean, obviously we need some reform, and there's issues all across the food system, from grain to berries to processing to meat packing. It's all become super consolidated. We have some protections. We have some antitrust laws on the books. We have the stockers and pack yards, stockers and stalker. Man, I can't think.
Oh yeah, no
The
problem.
Stockyards Act. There's all kinds of laws on the books to prevent these kind of consolidations and monopsonies forming. The question is, like, how have we not seen this coming over the last 40 to 50 years when they started introducing these Wall Street farm bills? How did we not see this consolidation coming and do something to prevent it?
I mean, because it's all about laws are only as good as the enforcers. I mean, I'm an Iowan. Take my favorite little example is Iowa has a law in the book called the Packer ban. Like, you cannot own the animal you slaughter. So that if you actually enforce it, you break up most of the meat companies. Like, the largest owner of hogs in Iowa, or sorry, in America now, is the Chinese-owned Smithfield. They own 1 in 4, 1 in 5 hogs. You enforce that law, you'd break it up, but we don't. The Attorney General of Iowa, Brenda Byrd, has chosen not to enforce a law that would, deconcentrate this stuff. I mean, that is an undercurrent of my book too. And it was both sides here of when you have, I mean, take a look at the current USDA secretary. He's a former industrial dairy lobbyist. I mean, as governor of Iowa, he oversaw the death of the hog family farmer. And then as secretary of agriculture under Obama and now Biden, he saw the death of the dairy family farm. He's not enforcing these laws. I mean, it's almost cartoonish how incompetent USDA is becoming and captured by industry.
Remind me again, what did Vilsack do while Trump was president?
So there's these little things called checkoff. Do a lot of your listeners know what those are?
Yeah, and I think most of them hate him.
Okay, yeah. No, I was obsessed with including checkoffs in this book because to me, I know most beef ranchers know about them, but 99% of Americans don't, and I really do think they control the food conversation in America.
They do, because the checkoffs, they claim to act as the voice of the producer in the marketplace, but often they're the voice of the big monopolies in the marketplace that control them. That, like with the beef checkoff, it seems like they're the mouthpiece for the packers.
Yes,
but the packers don't pay the checkoff. We pay the checkoff.
I think it's even darker in hogs. I mean, look at Smithfield. The largest parent of the pork checkoff is a Chinese multinational. So the voice of the pork association is really the voice of a Chinese multinational. That is so dark. And then the board of the pork checkoff, you would have senior executives at Smithfield on the board of the checkoff. I mean, it is, to me, the checkoffs are responsible for the revolving door of USDA because it's such a lucrative thing. I mean, Vilsack made $1 million a year. His job was industrial dairy lobbyist. So like Canada has a dairy system that maintains the family farm. His job was to gut it because we're producing too much industrial dairy in the Panhandle, in New Mexico, Bakersfield. And so how do we dump, cheddar cheese on them? That was his job.
Well, we kill the family farmers and we just shift all that production to the industrial dairies in the Panhandle and in New Mexico, because those are run by big corporations.
Yes.
That we can buy stock in and invest in. And then we can write the laws to favor those big companies, and we can all share in the rising stock price.
And so that's why, I mean, I was so determined to include checkoffs. It's just, there's so much self-dealing in that. There's no oversight. There's tons of government accountability reports telling USDA there's something going wrong here. You got to correct it. You got to fix it. And USDA doesn't do anything. And actually what concerns me most is under Trump consolidated on the checkoffs with GIPSA, the Grain Inspection Stockyard Packard Act. It's like a alphabet soup, but basically that entity's job was to police the meat markets. So you have both the promotional authority is also the regulator. Like, we know how that story plays out. It further neuters that USDA antitrust enforcement arm.
I mean, it's the wolves watching the hen house.
Yes, exactly.
and being responsible for telling you what the chicken count is every day.
Isn't that wild? I mean, that is like what, and then on top of it, all this chuck on money finances a lot of the agriculture news. A lot of these national hog farmer type publications, they just copy paste press releases from the hog, the hog checkoff. I mean, it's a little delusional. It's it's the wolf is telling you, like, I don't know. I'm glad you said that, because it's just something, it's like my personal pet peeve right now. I don't want to say vendetta, I don't know the right word here, but like,
It's almost like the checkoffs are continuously trying to gaslight us.
yes. And what's scary about the checkoffs is they realized the whole advertising component, got milk, all that kind of pork, the other white meat, didn't really work. So what's happened now is, as we privatize our land grants, checkoff money has filled the void. So you're just seeing all this junk finance being financed by the checkoffs. The manure digesters, that kind of ethanol in the airplanes, that kind of stuff. Also, like, if you want tenure at these land grants, you do the bidding of checkoff. So you're seeing a lot of junk science, just money being wasted. I mean, my dairy baron, I thought, was the best example of it, because this is the weird thing about writing this book, is you both have to admire what people did, but also realize just how detrimental it was to all of us. And my dairy baron, Mike and Sue Mikulski, they saw what happened to hogs. They saw how the hog family farmer died in the 90s in Iowa, and they're like, we're not going down like that. And keep in mind, neither of them come from farm families. She's from the suburbs of New York, and he's I think Mexican or Puerto Rican. Trained as a veterinarian. Started it. Oh, sorry.
Spoiler alert, because I've heard the book. They didn't want to go out like that, so they ended up on top and made everybody else go out.
Yes. And it's just, there's a savviness. I mean, they wanted to make a branded premium product. They realized if they didn't have branded product, they'd go down. So they created their own fancy milk, Fairlife. I mean, it's, as one Coke executive called it, it's twice the price at half the volume of normal milk. It has a long shelf life. I mean, I know a lot of people that drink it. If you go into any gym in America, any Planet Fitness, young men love it because the protein content is super high in it.
I don't think it tastes very good.
No, I don't either. I mean, that's why I was talking to a grocery person. They told me, if you ever look at it, you don't actually see the milk, because they realize it's almost like a Elmer's glue white. It's just too white.
Yeah.
And people don't like it. Just a total side note, I know I'm going off on a tangent. I think lost in all this consolidation is the collapse in taste.
Yes, 100%. Because
And
everything's got to be commoditized, streamlined for the most efficient production. Like
yes.
strawberries. They look pretty. The ones we get out of my garden don't look near as pretty. They're not near as big. They are 1,000 times tastier.
That, and like, I mean, I even did milk tastings writing this book, and inputs matter, especially meat and dairy production. And the scary thing here, it's turning people, as corners get cut, because also corporate types don't understand quality. They look at Excel sheets. They don't know what they're doing when they're making these decisions. They don't live it. They don't even usually eat the product. That's the sad thing. But when you cut corners and quality deteriorates, people turn away from the product. I mean, I forgot how good pork is. Good pork is phenomenal. It's my favorite meat personally. But industrial pork just tastes awful, because it's just, these pigs aren't moving their muscles. They're just inside all day eating corn. They don't have a rich diet. I mean, a lot of people don't like pork. I'm like, you don't know what good pork is.
Yeah, good pork comes from a pastured operation where they've been fed a varied diet, and they get some time to go outside and move around. Not in a barn. I mean,
I know it's not rocket science here. That's the funny part.
I mean, if it wasn't for hog barns, chicken barns, and cattle feedlots, including cattle dairies of like 20,000 head, where they're standing in a steel pen and eating everything out of a bunk, even though it doesn't have a roof on it, it's just as confined as the hog and chicken barns. And that's the commoditized product. We feed everything the same, so we get a uniform product. We take some of the stuff out of it that we can make, like Fairlife. They filter and process their milk so they can get other solids out of it and do other value add products in addition to their branded program, which is a great idea. Like the analog for a beef guy would be building a grass-fed beef business, charging a premium for the price, or charging a premium for the product, which, it can be seen as a premium product in some markets, very similar to the Fairlife milk. And then you take, all the things you really can't sell in your beef box to your customer, and you can put them into like snack sticks. You can put them into beef jerky. You put them in a sausage and get a value add. And instead of getting pennies on the dollar, you can recoup that value.
Mm-hmm.
So like when a company like Fairlife does that, they have, I forget, I think he went over some of it in the book, they have their different little, different products. They're taking milk, they're taking stuff out of it, and they're doing stuff with it over here, and they're making vast sums of money. But those are all byproducts. And I guess where I'm going with that is that's just a lot of processing.
Yes.
And it seems like every week I'm seeing several articles, not from the US news media, but usually from European, especially British news media, about how terrible ultra processed foods are. The articles I've seen from the US media are defending ultra processed foods. Like some of them may actually be good for you. No, I don't buy that shit at all. So I guess where I'm going is I don't see a big conspiracy to feed us crap food with all the nutrients and good crap removed so they can sell us drugs later. But that's what's happening. Like they sell us crap food to make us sick. So we got to buy their drugs.
That, just to step back just for a second for your listeners, going back to the checkoffs real quick.
Okay.
Fairlife was financed by checkoff money. Like this, you know what I mean? That really bothered me is you took money. Mike financed lawsuits to abolish the checkoff and went all the way to the Supreme Court. Allegedly, he did. I should caveat that. Because he didn't want to pay into a program that was, his competition was traditional milk. He didn't want to pay into it. He lost, and so he seemingly got into bed with it, including getting money from family farmers to create his own branded product that he then later sold to Coke. That is outrageous. I just want to let your listeners know that. Going back to what you're saying over the highly processed food stuff, I mean, just to add on two things. One is, I'm really at the point now of I just think we should almost junk the modern farm bill. The Heritage Foundation and Cato have talked a lot about it, is farmers doing it right essentially get nothing.
Yeah.
It takes money now to eat healthy in America because we heavily subsidize highly processed foods. But if you grow fresh food, you don't get anything. I mean, to me, the best example of the rot of that program is crop insurance. Your listeners probably know, but most Americans don't realize Bill Gates is one of the largest owner of farmland in America.
Yep.
And
250,000 acres.
Isn't that wild? I was actually one of my bucket list things this week is just to calculate, how much land is that really? How many Rhode Islands is that? Because I can't even fathom that number.
Well, okay. So there's farmland, which is, arable, tilled land you run a tractor and a tool over. Bill Gates is one of the largest guys. It's like right around 250,000 acres. That won't even make the top 10 list of largest landowners, period.
Because all the forest land and I know Ted Turner has all that ranch land.
I think the top two are timber owners out west. And somewhere in the top 5, 3, 4, 5 is going to be Ted Turner with like 2.2 million acres. But he's also kind of he's at the end of his rope. And there's some rumors that pieces of that Turner operation may fly off when Ted leaves us. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I mean, 250,000 acres, shitload of land, no doubt. And I think Rhode Island is somewhere like 600,000 acres.
That is, but think of it, there's no also cap on crop. There's no cap on crop insurance. So Bill Gates can get as much subsidy as he wants to grow corn for highly processed food. Whereas
grow corn and soybeans to make fake meat.
And then add that in, most of that will be robotics soon. I mean, you go to these tractor shows now. I mean, these tractors drive themselves, essentially. And it's just what is farming at that point? What is row crop farming? That's the scary thing for Iowa. That's why my big hope, as weird as it sounds, is, ethanol's going to die. It's just, cars are into hybrids, EVs. I mean, my grandparents just bought an SUV that gets 50 miles a gallon. What are you going to do with all that farmland, all that corn land? To me, it's put animals back on the land.
You're right, but I just don't see that happening. I see the corn farmers continue to grow corn,
Right.
ethanol falls, and then they start screaming that the price is down. So the government will have to introduce a new program or create a new industry to use all the corn to prop up the corn farmers.
I mean, you're right. They're trying to put ethanol into airplanes right now, but I mean, it's 2024. No one, if you believe ethanol is good for the climate, then you believe the world is flat.
Yes. I'm glad we're all finally there. That this whole
No, I mean,
fuel
I really do believe
water
this is
trade.
yeah. I mean, this is a weird thing. My dad was an ethanol truck driver. I'm in Iowa. Like, trust me, we call them ethanol homes. Like peak ethanol, like 2012, when it was like $7 corn, tons of McMansions went up in rural Iowa. That said, I actually think ethanol has been really detrimental to Iowa, especially southern Iowa. That used to be cattle country. That's hilly soil. You can't compete at leasing or if you're a young farmer wanting to get into the business against, the ethanol money. I mean, it was such a heavily subsidized crop.
Yeah. And well, I mean, we got to be green, right? We got to save the environment. Anything to save the environment. If we don't do this now, we've got, we won't have a future left. We won't have a planet left to give to our kids.
And just here's the thing, going back to like your point on like highly processed food and all that kind of stuff. What I think is bipartisan, what I've noticed too, is like most people don't know how to cook anymore. Like I'm a fan of bringing back home ec. I mean, I was embarrassed. I didn't know how to break down a chicken until recently. I had to watch YouTube videos. People want that. I mean, a lot of kids just they learn by doing.
Where I think we could really make some great strides to improve the food system is to get our kids involved.
Yes.
In elementary, in middle school, before high school, we need to set them up with better eating habits on better food that they actually have a connection to rather than Lunchables that come off a damn truck. I mean, did you know the guy that invented Lunchables wouldn't let his kids have them?
Yeah, I saw that. Like that was here's the thing. I grew up on Lunchables. My mom, she was a small business owner. She worked like 70-hour weeks. And I love the pizza ones. I get it's easy.
I mean, we like the convenience. We've worked ourselves to a place where we think we have to have the convenience because we've made ourselves so busy with all the bullshit that we don't need to be doing.
Yes. And you pay for it long term then. It's your health, there's health consequences from it long term.
Ultra processed food. I mean, lots of health consequences from that later down the line. I mean, and the list is so long. I was just sitting here thinking like, okay, what have I read that can be linked to ultra processed food? I mean, everything: cancer, heart disease, arthritis, autoimmunes, you name it. Everything. Like they're trying to link everything back. Maybe some of it'll stick, maybe some of it won't. If I can go eat grass-fed beef, and I know that meat was raised on my pastures that I don't put anything on, and the only thing I gave my cows was protein tubs, salt, and scenery, there's probably not a whole lot of junk in the meat. When I go to Walmart, I don't know how that animal was raised or treated, what it ate in the feedlot, how many drugs it was given.
Yep.
The same thing when you go grab a box of Cheerios, you don't know what that wheat was sprayed with. You don't know how it was processed. You don't know what they took out and what chemicals they put back in. So like I've said this before on a podcast. I remember in the late 80s. And I remember going to the store with my mom and seeing a box of cereal and it says now with 13 vitamins and minerals added. And, she'd explained to me the difference between whole wheat bread and white bread. We didn't eat white bread. We ate whole wheat bread and it was coarse and like, it's not like the whole wheat bread we have now. It was more like halfway between bread and cardboard almost. It was pretty coarse.
Yeah.
But when that's all you've had and you grow up on it, that's normal. And then when the first time you have a piece of white bread, it's like crack. Because it kind of is like crack.
Yeah. I mean, this stuff is engineered. Like even Fairlife, they engineered that for like 10, 15 years. They got it just right. I mean, the scary thing, to be frank with you, when I did milk tastings I would have people try industrial milk, pasture milk, and then Fairlife. Everyone thought industrial milk was the worst. Pasture milk, people loved it or hated it. They either thought it was too creamy and they loved it. Like they loved or hated that creaminess. Fairlife, people, I don't personally like it, but a lot of people liked it. And part of it is, keep in mind, that was tested like no other. You know what I mean? Every little level was engineered in a lab to be just right. It's like the most amount of people possible. 'Cause that is what industrialization does. I mean, I joke like Cheez-Its. I cannot have just one Cheez-It. These things they're crack. Like you said, like they're playing with certain things in our brain. They're giving that short-term surge at the expense of our long-term health. I mean, that said, I mean, you wrote a book on robber barons. People really want hope right now. Everyone knows the system's not working. I think schools could really be the driver of our better system. Like, take Kansas. Who doesn't want all beef served in Kansas coming from Kansas beef farmers doing it right? Instead of this Brazilian rainforest beef. Also, like, that's good politics. The suburbs of Kansas City, those, suburban moms just love that idea. Instead of also, like, let's treat being a cafeteria worker like a middle-class profession. Instead of just cooking frozen pizza for part-time, make it a full-time living. Let them work with their farmers. Let them, if there's a bumper crop of whatever, let them cook with it. Like, just respect that profession. And, like, you're keeping your money local. It's better tasting. I mean, there's just so much. Kind of thing I really internalized writing this book, Brian, was how radical our systems become. And everything we're talking about is actually really traditional. Like talking about home ec, talking about good food for our kids, like talking about animals in pasture. Like, it is insane that one man does 5 million hogs a year.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I almost want to say it's unnatural. I mean,
yes.
Part of the magic of being a farmer or a rancher is having that connection with your animals and having that connection with your land. And, I wake up every day and it's great going out and seeing new life. Like, okay, we got flies today. That means the birds are going to be here. We've got dung beetles rolling poo around. That's pretty awesome. I like going out and seeing all the life. And the other side of the system, the industrial system, that's not what a lot of those guys are going out every day and looking for. Whether they know it or not, they're going out and they're looking for death. Or they're going out to cause death. Not necessarily cause death of the livestock that's under their care, but maybe cause death of another organism that they think is a threat. Like, let's just say a parasite, a virus, or bacteria. But in a natural, resilient system where the animals aren't standing in their own feces and urine all day and eating the same thing out of a concrete bunk, they've got the opportunity to get away, go eat what they need to eat out of the pasture for their nutritional needs. They stay healthier.
That's actually why, that point, I think most people don't realize. And I think that's why a lot of people are angry, is when you're a family farmer, you're your own boss, you also have that intimacy. But you're right about these industrial hogs facility. Your job essentially haul out dead pig bodies all day. Like 10% of pigs die inside this. So you just haul it out, you throw them into a dumpster, and think what that even does to the people who don't even do that, but live around it. What you used to see is like a happy neighbor. Now you just see a dumpster full of bloated pig bodies and vultures. It really destroys the community and just kind of, I don't know. I noticed that the most with dairy farmers, the happiness, that relationship with the animal. They know the personalities of every cow. I just that's what's really been internalized to me, and what we've lost. I call this Excel thinking, this whole Wall Street. You can't farm by Excel, but they're trying to.
Reduce everything down to a variable to be controlled.
Yes.
To be eliminated so that we can maximize our long-term efficiency and our long-term production.
And it's not long-term efficiency. That's like the funny part. It's like,
it's long-term profit or profit, short-term profit, really.
Yes. It's because, it's that whole Wall Street extraction, short-term, it's quarterly thinking. Like, that's what I noticed the difference between family-owned businesses and these corporate types is the family business will think long-term. They understand, we might take a little hit here. This is a random example. Texas Roadhouse, I think, is a fascinating restaurant to study. It's actually a good Audible, the guy who created it. The guy who built that, it's the third largest sit-down chain restaurant in America now. People in the restaurant industry think it will overtake Olive Garden, Applebee's in the next few years, and it's because they still do quasi scratch cooking in the back. The guy who created it really worked on those recipes. Really, I mean, this is a weird thing to say. He started out with his own disco in Kentucky, and like he ran a disco for a long time, and he took that kind of lessons and applied it to a restaurant where, for example, he realized Americans love booths, tons of booths in the Texas Roadhouse. They like different eye levels so they can see people. That's why you have all those different heights going on. They like theater, so you see the meat case when you walk in. You see them making the buns. And he workshopped that bun recipe for years. Anyone that's been to Texas Roadhouse knows those buns are crack. You know what I mean? Like there's that level of craftsmanship there and professionalism. And even like the managers of a Texas Roadhouse are usually always very impressive people. They're running like the amount of volume that restaurant does is truly insane. But you don't have that when you have the corporate types. I mean, I can tell right away when I'm in a private equity owned restaurant. Go to Perkins. You know, Perkins is just in a free fall right now because they lost that. They lost that craftsmanship.
Or go to Red Lobster.
Yeah, I mean, it's awful. I mean, you go to my actually, I went to Burger King the other day. My grandma had cancer last year, or she still has, but she really got interested in having a Whopper after her cancer treatments. It's like it became her thing. So we did a double date with my grandparents. We got Burger King. We all got Whoppers. It was $50, and it was awful. It was an awful hamburger because it's owned by private equity now, and it's just like it's maybe one of the worst hamburgers I've ever had recently. It was just like you could literally take the patty and do this.
Host the ultimate backyard barbecue with Whole Foods Market. It's the hot grill summer event through July 16th with sizzling sales on no antibiotics ever boneless beef ribeye steak and beef New York strip steak. Plus, check out sales on sustainable wild-caught Alaska sockeye salmon, organic strawberries, and more. In a hurry? Choose grab-and-go favorites like picnic salads and sushi, plus plenty of cooler-friendly beverages. Make it a hot grill summer at Whole Foods Market.
At Evernorth Health Services, we believe costs shouldn't get in the way of life-changing care, and we're doing everything in our power to make it possible. Behavioral health solutions that also keep your projections at their best? It's possible. Pharmacy benefits that benefit your bottom line? It's possible. Complex specialty care that cares about your ROI? It's possible. Because we're already doing it. All while saving businesses billions. That's Wonder made possible. Learn more at evernorth.com/wonder.
I don't know if Red Robin is a corporate chain or not, but about a month ago we ended up at a Red Robin, and I just really like it. And now it's just nothing special.
No, it lost it. You have to. That's why. But that's the story of the American economy now. It's just when these corporate types take over, the Red Lobsters, the Red Robins, the Burger Kings, like my coffee baron. They bought Panera. They sell more coffee than Starbucks, but no one knows who they are. And it's just they don't run them. It's all about taking money out and not putting money in and serving you a good product. So you're paying more for garbage, essentially what I think of it.
Well, I mean, and it kind of circles back to part of the conversation we were having a few minutes ago. They engineer these products. Like there's food scientists and they get these focus groups together, and their whole job is to make that food more appealing, more attractive, more palatable, make it creamier, make it have a better mouthfeel. I mean, these companies spend extraordinary sums of money to engineer their food to make you eat more, which is just good business. I mean, applying that to my scheme, if there's something I could feed my cows for 2 years that makes them better at the end, I would do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it also seems like that in the pursuit of doing that, kind of like my example with the bread, we mill the germ off the wheat because that's what makes it coarse. Well, the germ is where all the good stuff is. The kernel's just the starch. The germ's where all the vitamins, nutrients, minerals are that starch in that plant would need to get going. But we got to take that off because that reduces the quality later on. But don't worry, we'll just add those vitamins and minerals back in from another source. That's one of the huge problems I have with processed food. Okay, we've had a big discussion in the world about monosodium glutamate, MSG.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everybody knows about MSG now. We look for it on labels. People talk about palm oil. and the 53,000 different names for palm oil. I mean, it's pretty easy to find that on a label. But like, there's so many of these ingredients, like, that they don't have to tell us what they are or where they come from. Like, where do you get the vitamin A, B6, and 12 that you're adding to this product? Where does that come from? What's the source of that? And are those vitamins and minerals in a bioavailable form in your product? I have a feeling that a lot of products that have pretty good nutrition claims on the label, like the flashier the box is, the bigger that nutrition label, and the more things it says it has, I feel like the more it's lying to you.
Yes.
And the more that product is trying to get you to not look at what isn't there, or not look at something else and just pay attention to the claim. Oh, there's no trans fat in this. Oh, that's great. What are you hiding? Those are the questions I have when I start reading boxes.
Yeah. But you know what? On the side note, consumers are starting to respond, I will say. I was talking to a dairy guy the other day, and Daisy, that's the cottage cheese company.
I'm familiar with them. Yeah.
Blockbuster numbers. I mean, I think cottage cheese year over year is up like 25%. I was just reading, but Daisy's doing phenomenal because you look at the ingredients, it literally says like salt and cream. That's it. You know what I mean? It's not like 20, some kind of gum, some kind of blank, some kind of that. You know what I mean? I think people are responding to that. Also, it makes a different tasting product. I mean, let's be honest, most of this is industrial dairy milk. I'm not, holding it up on a pedestal, but it's nice. I mean, I find it refreshing as a consumer to see that. And I will say, across the political spectrum, people just kind of know this stuff is garbage. And the other thing here too going on is like the incompetency of USDA to make these labels mean something. I mean, it really undermines people doing it right. Like, what is made in USA anymore? I mean, I know beef farmers just know what. I mean, we're decades into making that label mean something. Like, how hard is it to make a label mean something? Like, this should take a week.
It should. And it shouldn't cost me $10,000 to have a custom label made if I want to be able to label my meat packages.
Yes.
And go through a lengthy approval process. Like, those are just huge barriers to entry. But they can turn around and say, well, you can sell this many up to these kinds of people, and you don't have to worry about labels. You don't have to worry about anything else. Well, but if I want to scale past that, or if I have to scale past that for financial reasons, well, then it doesn't make sense. It's another barrier of entry that the big boys have gotten USDA to implement to reduce competition.
That's why, I mean, that example is why we need trust busting. And I know this sounds over the top to say, I really do think JBS is the closest thing to a criminal organization in corporate America. I mean, they bribed their way to monopoly level status. And I'm not talking like campaign donations. I meant like they pled guilty to bribing over 1,800 politicians. It is insane. I mean, first of all, we let them
to bribing inspectors to let in contaminated meat into the U.S. They got caught doing that. And then the next week, Vilsack gave them a $600 million contract to feed the Department of Defense.
So you gotta be, thing with them, I realized this is like the one chapter I was like incredibly afraid of litigation. So even the meat inspectors, you have to like kind of say allegedly, because what they tend to do is they get caught and they pay a fine. They're accused of price fixing in like every protein category, and then they pay a fine. It's just the cost of doing business behaving this way. Here's the thing though.
Family and their drugs. Like, yeah, we know we're going to get caught. We know we're going to get a fine, but we also know we're going to make so much absurd money off this that the fine is pennies and we'll just pay it later.
Well, speaking of Vilsack, I mean, Vilsack worked for the Sacklers. That's a underappreciated history most people don't know. But just going back to this real quick on JBS, here's the thing. They're never going to give you an ounce of market share. I mean, if you start doing the right thing, gaining it, they're going to squash you. I mean, that's your example of all these little regulations on the small packers, or that's what big boys do, is regulatory capture. They want to essentially capture the system and put in all these little things to harm you so they can maintain their dominance. I mean, that's like kind of where like I kind of tussle with libertarians is you gotta attack the concentrated power, because the concentrated power controls the political system. And until you do that, you can't unleash innovation. You can't, because people doing it right are already running uphill. And what monopolies do is they entrench themselves.
It's interesting as a libertarian to think about some things like this and think about how we would build a better system.
Yes.
How would we codify a new constitution to prevent these kinds of things? And, I actually have a couple pages or about a half a page of notes here, and it'll take some more thinking about it. And I'm not suggesting like to completely rewrite the document today, but I mean, there could be some additions to help prevent the revolving door between government and private, and even NGOs like the checkoffs. Like there has to be some mechanism to prevent revolving doors like that. There should be some sort of a mechanism to prevent government employees from being able to profit off insider knowledge in the stock market. Nancy Pelosi, we're looking at you like directly. Okay. And she's just the worst example of the problem. The problem exists on both sides of the aisles, right? Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. You're all corrupt. You're all double dealing and doing insider trading. Okay. Every single one of them. I don't care. You don't go to the White House as basically poor and then leave with $15 million. That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me.
That's the thing about the beef stuff that gets me most angry is we've done this before. There's actually a playbook in front of us. Like Teddy Roosevelt did this a century ago. You know what I mean? Like we're not trying to deal with AI or search engines here. These are meat monopolies we dealt with a century ago. And that's kind of what you learn in school is like when you learn about monopolies, you learn about meat packing.
And thinking back and kind of going back over how you laid it out in the book. Yeah, we had this problem 100 years ago. Like we weren't as bad off 100 years ago, I don't think, with the consolidation of the packers.
Totally. I mean, this is the largest meat packing company the world's ever seen.
Yeah, we weren't this bad off with the consolidation. I mean, of course it's going to be bigger because there's more people in the world. But like I'll just say it, I have no faith that the government will do anything meaningful to break up the meat monopolies in beef, chicken, pork, or in grain and berries. I don't see it going away.
This is where I might be a little too optimistic here. The politics of breaking them up are so good right now because it's like, as a grocery store person told me, people judge a grocery store based on their meat and dairy cases. And that's usually the thing people notice prices is the most. People are being gouged left and right in meat, especially beef. I mean, if there's one graph I could include in my book, it's what's happening to the rancher right now. Like what consumers are paying for beef and the store goes up and up and what they're getting is flat. That's just the story of monopoly. Someone's going to realize the good politics of it. Some Teddy Roosevelt type figure is going to go in there and do something. Because on top of it, these aren't even American-owned companies. That, to me, is the most wild thing. These are foreign-backed state monopolies. Like, not even state-backed companies, state-backed monopolies. Like, pork is so important to the Chinese diet, they wanted to have a state monopoly to do it. Same thing with Brazil and beef. I mean, that is... Well, I just think it's a piñata saying, hit me, hit me.
There's no such thing as a privately owned Chinese company.
True. Fact. I mean, that is... The fact that we can't...
There is no such thing as a privately owned Chinese company. They're all controlled by the government. Why are we allowing the Chinese government to be the biggest pork producer in the United States?
Ask Farm Bureau. Why is Farm Bureau quiet on this? I think the Iowa Farm Bureau is truly in bed with these organizations. I mean, it is... Here's the thing. Like, look at hogs in Iowa. We're producing more and more every year. We're not eating more pork. It's for export. It's for the Chinese market. So why are we destroying rural Iowa to feed China?
Because
it makes no sense. What?
Because it's profitable.
Yes.
I mean, it's difficult to be in ag, be practicing ag, and talk about environmental destruction, because other people in ag are like, why are you attacking me? We got to support ag. We got to band together. There's not many of us. If we don't stick together, they'll shut us all down. Look, guys, if you don't clean your shit up, you're going to get a shutdown.
Yes, that is, I mean, it's getting so bad. I mean, like my parents have a camper in rural Iowa, and we do not touch the well water at this point. Waterways in Iowa are an open sewer. 70% of the waterways in Iowa are too polluted for people to go in. And it's just, I mean, the thing that's going to be, to me, I think in the Corn Belt, that's going to break the camel's back is going to be the cancer stuff. I mean, Iowa has the second highest cancer rate in the country.
Oh, but Roundup's safe. Roundup doesn't cause cancer. You can drink that stuff. It's perfectly safe. It has no effect on humans whatsoever.
It's scary shit. I mean, what I find fascinating. So I didn't touch the GMO stuff in my book. That is not, I'm not a scientist and I will not touch that. I think what's really interesting is you're seeing a lot of people become gluten sensitive. And like, there's this, oh my God, this other thing where you can't even, your body shuts down when it eats gluten. It's ticking up. Celiac disease, that's really increasing too. I mean, this is all, who knows what's going on? I didn't touch this because honestly, the lawsuits come like crazy when you touch this stuff.
I think there's two things going on with gluten sensitivity. Celiac disease is a thing, and I think it affects a pretty steady percentage of people. I think what they're calling gluten sensitivity is more sensitivity to a
processed food
that's had all of the good crap stripped off of it and a bunch of crap put back in, or it's happened. This rise of gluten sensitivity has happened so fast. It is not genetic. It is environmental.
Yes.
We screwed up gluten. We screwed up wheat. We screwed up gluten, and people can't digest it, and they're getting sick from it.
I'll be frank. I got gluten sensitive writing this book. I mean, here's the thing. I love pizza. So like, I just blow it up. You know, it makes me uncomfortable for a few days. Who knows? I mean, I've heard people tell me all these different theories, what's going on. I can't quite process it anymore. Doesn't stop me, but I just have to accept that's a consequence when I have it. You talk to grocery industry people. I mean, that fake meat stuff is petering out. People just aren't buying it. They try it once. They're like, it tastes like crap. The gluten stuff is like gluten-free stuff is really taken off. I mean, it is. If you want, like, I actually find the most fascinating people to talk about are grocery people, because I mean, these things shift so fast. I don't know. I'm really curious to see how this story plays out.
Okay. What do you want to talk about? We got all the time in the world.
It's a good question. Let's talk grocery stores, because I think that's everyone grocery shops.
How consolidated are grocery stores?
Say what?
How consolidated are grocery stores?
So if we were like making a movie of this, Walmart would be like the head honcho, like the king of kings, like the godfather of the barons.
Yeah, and like 25 years ago, Walmart didn't sell groceries. Well,
isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I was born the year Walmart entered the grocery market. And here's the thing. The Walmart Supercenter comes from the French, which I think is hilarious. Sam Walton was on vacation and saw this thing in a French company called Carrefour. They called hypermarkets. He's like, oh, I'll make the American version of it. And the original one opened in Dallas and Topeka, I think, or Wichita. I'm not sure which one in Kansas, but they were like 350,000 square feet. And they realized it was too big. It was too much walking for Americans. So the Supercenter was a small town version of that concept. But what for Walmart's thinking was, they're not going to make a lot of money in grocery. You know, grocery is so hard, it's so tight, but it gets you in the store more, and they make their money when they sell you tennis balls, t-shirts, all that other stuff. And so
they don't make their money when you go in for tennis balls and buy a gallon of milk and a block of cheese, or you go in for a loaf of bread and you leave with a set of car tires.
I mean, that's the thing, is they want to capture every dollar that you have. That is their goal. They're like the company store. You know what I mean? They're basically putting banks inside them. They tried out healthcare clinics. They're trying out veterinary clinics inside them, pharmacies. I mean, it's all about, like, people just don't realize you don't buy, like when Walmart comes to this town, you don't buy more milk. You just shift your consumption. So first they killed downtown, then they killed the mall. And I actually think that the next recession, a lot of these big box stores, the Party City, USA, these staples, they're all going to go bankrupt because like Walmart online, I mean, that's the underappreciated thing right now is Walmart and Amazon have been this epic war the last 5 years. And it's been centered in grocery where Walmart used its grocery stores as a way to go after Amazon online. Amazon bought Whole Foods for that, to go after Walmart. I think Walmart's winning. I mean, Walmart online is very impressive. I mean, it's faster than Amazon for shipping. Walmart is firing on all cylinders. And here's the thing with their market power. They sell 1 in 3 groceries in America. We've never had a company that powerful in the food system. I mean, their market share is the same as the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, and 8th combined in grocery.
It's pretty crazy. Like how much in basically 20 years, Walmart has come to just dominate groceries.
Oh, and like, this is a weird thing to say, Brian. Like when I first started talking to grocery people, I kind of thought Walmart to me is almost the closest thing we've ever had in America to a Soviet Union style Politburo. Because when you supply to Walmart, you're not negotiating evenly here. It's supply and command. They dictate to the food system. If they want something done a certain way, the food system has to respond because they sell 1 in 3. I mean, it is an insane amount of power. And it also creates other robber barons. I mean, that's how Driscoll's became my berry baron is they saw the rise of Walmart is Walmart doesn't want an individual vendor for each store. They want one company to do 4 berries year round for 4,000 stores. And companies buy other companies because they want some kind of power to negotiate against Walmart.
Yep. And that's how it happens. I mean, Walmart can just basically say, I heard stories over the years, somebody will get in Walmart and Walmart's like, okay, we'll do 10,000 units at $2. Great. No problem. And the next year they come back and they're like, we want 20,000 units and we're going to pay you $1.90. Okay, fine. No big deal. I'm still making money. Volume's up. Guys are staying busy. And then like you get somewhere down the line and Walmart's like, well, now you're going to do 500,000 units for $1 each. And if that's below your cost of production and you just can't get there, what do you say? I can't do it, or we'll do it anyway. And like you said, Walmart doesn't care.
No. They're the richest family in America.
Because they have other people that would stab you in the back for the opportunity to work with that company.
Also, if you're an executive and you lose that Walmart as a client, you're fired. You lose 1/3 of your sales. And like, I think that the best example, one of their scariest examples of their power is I discovered they have this rule, 30%, that if you're a supplier to Walmart, no more than 30% of your sales can come from Walmart. They even publish a list shaming companies that are at that level or near it because Walmart realized when you go over 30%, you put yourself at the risk of bankruptcy because Walmart's such a vulture. So it basically wants you on life support, but doesn't want to kill you.
Yeah. And I remember that in the book. It's kind of like, and that must be a fairly recent thing within the last 10 or 15 years. It's like, you can't do more than 30% of your business with us, but we're going to tell you how much we're going to pay you for that 30% of your business.
Yes. And that's the scary thing. I mean, with Walmart's plays into dairy and beef right now is everything I heard is because Walmart was sick of being screwed by, JBS, the slaughtering, my slaughtering baron. And Walmart didn't fully vertically integrate because, I mean, a lot of people have seen Costco's moving to chicken and just been kind of disastrous. But Walmart wanted inside the cost structure because you don't screw with Walmart. And the fact that Walmart,
they bought into the big Creekstone plant here in Kansas. And I heard last week that they're looking at getting in on that North Platte, that big plant that the ranchers were building out in North Platte, that 4,000 head a day plant.
It's
Walmart getting involved with that ain't nothing good. Like that.
No, it just never ends well. I'm like, I get why people did it. I don't want to dismiss that, but it's like you get involved with Walmart, we know how this story goes.
Look, there's going to be a couple guys that were involved in that North Platte plant that walk away with some money. There's going to be a bunch of guys that walk away with nothing or a big loss. There's going to be a couple winners and a bunch of losers. And one of the big packers is going to own that plant for pennies on the dollar. within 10 years.
I mean,
I've been saying that since they announced it, and I will die on that hill. The caveat is Walmart may buy it, and who knows, in 15 years, Walmart might be one of the largest meat protein companies.
Oh, you don't know how you're right, though. I mean, this can go either way. First of all, they have the money. I mean, the family owns, here's the thing, let me back up. Jeff Bezos only owns like 10% of Amazon. The Walmart family owns like 50-ish% of the company. Like, they control the company. Some days they're the richest family in the world. Kind of depends on the stock market. But they own 2 NFL teams. I mean, whatever they want, they get. I mean, it is wild. I mean, it is the Walmart stuff too. It's who knows how this story is going to play out. I mean, it's scary.
Yeah, and it could go either way. It could go hard and fast either way. But at the end of the day, hey, that 4,000 head a day plant that they're talking about in North Platte, guys, you got to have a market. You got to have an outlet. Well, if Walmart's your outlet, you better take a long, hard look at Walmart's history of how they treat their corporate partners and how they treat their suppliers if you think that's going to be a workable thing long term.
Well, I'm glad you said the word even market, because like, here's the thing. You first look at a grocery shelf and you're like, oh, this is a free market. Everyone is competing to get a spot on my cart. But then you talk to grocery people and you're like, no, this is, as one grocery person told me, this is mafioso capitalism, because everything you see, shelf placement, slotting fees, all this, like, I mean, this is getting so rampant and bad where I don't know, most people realize Walmart's buying a TV company right now because it's for ads. Walmart's making a ton of money. Same with Amazon on the ads where, turns out if you're a company and you buy ads on, Walmart TV, well, maybe you'll get the in cap. You know what I mean? It's like this pay for play kind of system where it's sort of even for a new thing to break into the store.
Okay. You're kind of touching on a subject that I think is pretty interesting, like in the grocery stores. So yeah, you can walk down the meat case and there's 25 different brands. You walk down the cereal aisle and there's 10 different brands. You walk down the salad dressing aisle and there's 50 different brands. Of all of those brands, who are they owned by? Isn't there like a total of 7 mega companies that control 90% of non-protein, of non-meat food?
Oh, it's something. I mean, that wouldn't shock me. I mean, it's that whole illusion of choice because it's the whole inequality in America where that Whole Foods consumer wants to think they're getting a different product than a Dollar General consumer, even though it's the same product. Like, to me, peanut butter is the best example of this. Smucker's has like a 50-60% market share, but the market share is actually higher because they usually do the store label, and you only know when they do the store label. It's usually when there's a peanut recall. But they have all those different price points. They have the fancy organic peanut butter. Like, I don't even remember them. I mean, I'm kind of awful to grocery shop with because I love pointing this out to people. Like, oh yeah, this is owned by this. Actually, one of my favorite slides show people is I encourage your listeners, go to JBS's website and just look at the brands they own. It is wild. And here's the thing. Not one brand has their name on it. So right. You are buying their product and you don't know about it. And I learned this the other day. And I think it might have been Greg Gunthorpe on that farm in Indiana that told me this, was JBS's people are now, they're starting to understand how broken the meat market is. So they're trying to go to like the standalone independent mom and pop meat stores. JBS is opening its own version of these. So they look legit. Like, you know what I mean? It looks like you were to open your own meat market, but it's JBS.
Yeah, we're going to have a standalone meat market in downtown Kansas City. Where are they buying their halves or wholes? Where are they buying their box beef from? JBS, Cargill, Tyson, Marfrig. I mean, or are they going to, down to Diamond T Meats and buying it from the locker who's killing local cattle? They're probably buying it from the big conglomerate because they can get a volume deal and they only want to deal with one supplier.
Yes. And they want to cash on your image you worked really hard to do. And then undermine too, because you're not playing the same, you're not hiring children in the Amazon rainforest to raise your beef like they are.
I'm not hiring children to clean my meat packing plant in Minnesota or in Western Kansas either.
That's why I think when people read the book, my anger feels sucks the most, especially in JBS, because it's like, here's the thing, JBS is just a bully. It's just it's a kid that never faced real consequence for their action. They always get slapped on the wrist.
Allegedly.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saving my legal ass. Vilsack is just, his theory of change was, let's take your money, your taxpayer money, throw $1 billion at new startups in the meatpacking industry to dislodge a concentrated market. First of all, there's no example of that ever working in the history of America. Also, like, they're not going to give you shelf access. At best, you're making new meat options for the upper class Americans. At worst, most of these plants will go bankrupt because they don't get market access, and then Tyson's et al. Will buy them for pennies on the dollar. That's what I think will personally happen here. But it's just this, like, you have a chance to do something meaningful here. You have companies employing children and they're not facing real consequences, and everyone's pissed. Both political parties. You have Josh Hawley working with Elizabeth Warren on this stuff, yet you're incapable of making meaningful reforms here. And the fact is, the last 4 years, the meat markets have gotten more concentrated under Vilsack. Besides Walmart's move into beef, you have JBS buying a company, Tyson's bought a company, and then Cargill, the largest private company in America, bigger than the Koch brothers, got back into chicken.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Technically, Cargill can still be defined as a family farm.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, same with Koch's. Like, what is a family company?
Yeah.
From like a tax standpoint, if you're like an S corp or LLC, they generally classify you as a family company. Which, to be fair, 90% of Cargill is owned by the family,
and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just really gets me. It's really dishonest to say that Cargill is a family farm, like that they can be classified as a family farm. That really bothers me, because
that's why. Oh, totally.
And them being able to say we're a family farm, that totally skews the conversation. It totally skews all the statistics. I'm kind of a fan of the 80-20 rule.
Say more.
Well, if we look at the average of the whole, it's going to be skewed, because there's always going to be a very small percentage that accumulate more than the rest, whether we're talking about wealth, whether we're talking about energy, we're talking about land, women, whatever. There's always a very small percentage that manage to accumulate the vast majority of it. Let's take those guys out of the equation. Okay, let's take the top 5% off, maybe the bottom 5% off. And let's look at the middle. Let's look at how most people are doing. Because I think that's a more accurate representation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's lop off the top end that already has everything. Take them out of the equation. Let's just take the top 20% off. And let's deal with the bottom 80%. And let's try to get the bottom 80% to match the top 20%. Instead of looking at this whole big thing and saying, well, the average, our country is too big, too complex to be managed by averages and medians.
Yes. That's why, going back to the whole lawyers, like, I'm a big fan of bright line rules. Keep things as simple as possible. Packer ban. You cannot own animal slaughter. You know what I mean? You hire lawyers for gray areas and they always win. So, like, even what a farmer is, I mean, that to me is a big undercurrent in my book. Is most of these guys, they cosplay as farmers, but they're really just capital asset managers. Like, when you have your own spokesperson as a farmer, like my hog baron, you're not a farmer. I'm personally a fan of the Wisconsin Farmers Union definition of a family farm, where more than half the labor comes from the immediate family. I understand that, like, that definition doesn't quite work for, like, produce farmers, but, like, you got to start thinking that way. You got to define it and, like, make it. You can't caveat, you can't nuance it, because the second you do, that's when you get Cargill classified as a farmer.
And that's when there's loopholes and carve outs.
Yep.
And
this sounds weird. I mean, my dad and grandpa worked in the beer markets, so, like, they were beer distributors. My dad did gas stations. My grandpa did grocery stores. I think beer's a really interesting market to study, in that, like, it was very bright line for the longest time. Like, after Prohibition, we realized, so quick history in Prohibition is companies basically sold you beer at a loss or a cost because it got you drunk and then it made its money selling you prostitutes, drugs, whatever. So when they legalized it again, what they did is they created these bright line rules where if you make it, distribute it, and sell it are 3 different things. Once you hit a certain threshold, you know what I mean? If you're a small craft brewer, you don't need to do that. Kind of depends on the state, but that was the thing because they realized you want to avoid the pushing a product. So like my dad and grandpa were distributors. So like that way, and it was family owned business. And like, to me, I like thinking that way. How do you purposely design a system from a monopoly fully vertically integrating to kind of deconcentrate power? It's a nerdy thing, but like, you got to think this way. Like, what should this system be? Because we know the system's eventually going to break. It's just incredibly fragile. Like concentrated systems are fragile. What are we going to do when it breaks? What should the system be?
Or should the system be designed to periodically break and reform? And that's an interesting thought. You know, designing some kind of a durable framework that would last through the years to prevent this, to prevent corporate capture and monopoly. I think it has to be designed to fail eventually.
But this sounds weird.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
I think we're just kind of at the end state of empire. Like we're in the end game and it's going to collapse anyway. And maybe not because it's designed to collapse, but that's just because of how we're hard coded to eventually end up in a situation like this where there is a mass concentration of power and there are monopolies that are taking advantage of a lot of people. And the people that are being taken advantage of get tired of it. They rise up. They throw off the shackles of monopoly and they tear down the current system and they build a new one. Kind of seems to happen every 200 to 300 years. Pretty much.
No, I would say 100. I mean, I tend to think of this, you're right, it's cyclical. I mean, these things break. We regulate the markets. We restore competition. We put up guardrails to protect competition. And then slowly as companies get bigger, they push the envelope. You know what I mean? That's why I actually use this robber baron framework, because I want to show people we've been here before. Like I actually just think we're living in a second Gilded Age. You know, like this is a tale as old as time. It's greed always goes too far, and then greed breaks. And then but that's why I say, and I enjoy this. Like to me, what gives me hope is don't focus on the bad, focus on the positive. Like that's why like Animals Back on the Land post ethanol is like what I want to focus on, because like that to me is I want to live in that Iowa. Is start thinking that way, because I mean you got to do that deep thinking now, because when this stuff happens, it happens really fast. And also, by the way, the other thing too, I wrote this book over 5 years. Most people are doing it right. It's just a few greedy people holding this back. Most people want good meat. Most people want to buy local. These playing fields aren't level. So how do you level them?
Look, at the end of the day, most people just want to feed their family and keep their job.
Yeah.
They're trying to put food on their table, just trying to stay alive and keep a paycheck coming in. And the sad reality is most people are living paycheck to paycheck with a lot of it hidden government subsidy that comes in, and they have no financial freedom to speak out against things in the workplace. So they're more likely to look the other way when they're living paycheck to paycheck because, hey, I'm not going to say anything about this tiny little thing that's bothering me because I'm just trying to feed my family. We're going to look the other way because we just have to feed the world.
I kid you not, a lot of the information in this book were people in that position. That came from people in those positions, people that work in these industries being like, I know this isn't morally right, but I got to put my kids through college, or I got to pay for my housing payment. I mean, they'll tell you where the bodies are buried. And the thing that honestly surprised me the most so far in this book has been, by far the chapter people reach out to me the most is Walmart. I've had a lot of Walmart suppliers reach out to me being like, hey, I can't go on the record. I don't want you to know who I am, but here's some of the shenanigans I've seen, just so you know, so you can dig into it. Because you're right. It's just, in the end of the day, you got to survive moments like this. And I get it.
And we continue, like, we're put in these positions where it's like, we can speak out and we can risk our job. we can risk not being able to feed our family. We can risk not getting a paycheck for 2 weeks. Or we can look the other way and ignore it and maybe try to fight that fight later. And I'm not saying I've probably done it just as much as anybody else.
This is like a little bit of I don't mean to very much my mother showing me right now, but like there's a lack of gratefulness I feel like a lot of Americans have right now. Like I notice that when I go abroad is I realize how proud I am to be an American. We have it. I couldn't write this book in, you know what I mean? I couldn't write this book in most countries. You know, I can't write a book about the rich and like disclose their dirty secrets. Everyone's focusing on the negative. Focus on the positive. I can write this book. I mean, what shocked me the most, Brian, was a lot of my book talks in small towns in Iowa. How many old ladies asked me if I was worried about my safety, and I wasn't. You know, we can speak truth to power, and it's also, I don't know, people. To me, one of the most encouraging things right now in the political system, which I know there's far and few between, is this young woman named Lena Khan, who is running the Federal Trade Commission. She's the one filing all these monopoly cases against big tech. She's the one trying to break up Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon. And the Bernie people love her. And then Matt Gaetz just praised the heck out of her in the Wall Street Journal. Because, you know what I mean? She's kind of, people like seeing when someone exert power, you know, taking on the powers that be. Because it's just, people know what's going on. They see the shenanigans. And it's just nice to see a public servant doing what's best for the public.
That's kind of a rare thing as a public.
I know, but we got to raise our bar. I mean, that is on that same, what I tell all farm groups all the time is you got to push for personnel. Imagine if you were, you know what I mean, a sustainable rancher was Secretary of Agriculture, if Undersecretary or research, like all this kind of stuff, like no one's going to give you a seat at the table. You have to fight for it. That is just something I really ingrained in me is the Vilsack types will always be there. They're always going to be hacks. You need to fight for it, and you need to have your members of Congress, you know, pushing, getting people in the door. And that's why I tell every farm organization, you need to have a list of people who are willing to be public servants, and you need to be pushing that to your members of Congress. Because if you don't, then trust me, the checkoffs will.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's also like, what's the people that are the people that are most effective they're not playing that DC long-term game. If we gave you a political appointment and you're just there for 2 years, you don't you're going to do the right thing and get the fuck out. You know what I mean? Like that's actually how you make change is you're not indebted to them.
Term limits.
I know what I mean, or even age. I'm personally a fan of age limits, but you know, I have the oldest senator in the country right now.
While we're on this subject, maybe there should be an overall federal service limit.
What do you mean? Like time as a bureaucrat?
Time as a bureaucrat. Like time in Congress counts for this, time at, USDA, ATF, what other 3-4 letter agency counts as this. You can only spend so many years in government and you are banned for X number of years after you leave government from working for an organization. Like, let's just say if you worked at USDA, you couldn't go work in ag at a big corporation and make more money than government. Like there should be a ban on that. There should be some kind of a ban on insider trading. Now, look, I'm sitting here saying this as a small government, extremely limited government guy. I mean, government has a place, and the government's place should be to limit how much control or how much power any one person or any one corporation has.
And even like a simple thing of we need to rethink the structure of government. Like USDA, I mean, I think it should be stripped for parts. I mean, it's just not working for anyone. I mean, it's not working even the fact alone for farmers, it's not working. Also, nothing scares an agency more in DC than threatening to take away their budget.
And that's it. Like all these people are just trying to keep their jobs.
Yes.
They're just trying to keep their jobs. They're trying to justify their own existence so they can keep putting food on their table. That's why any sort of political reform is dead on arrival. That's why any politician that talks about stagnating or reducing the size of federal government will never get elected. Donald Trump talked about the swamp. Okay. Here's the swamp. The 80 to 85% of Washington, D.C. residents that work for the government, that lobby the government, that work for all these 3-letter agencies that donate and vote Democrat. And this isn't me saying the left is the problem. This is the fucking swamp. Okay. That's the swamp. All those people just want to keep their jobs. They're all on one side of the aisle, and they're all trying to work together to keep their jobs and increase the size of the federal budget because that benefits them. Increase the size, scope, and power of federal government because that benefits them at the end of the day, not guys like you and me.
I would, though, the problem here is, I mean, a lot of it's defense contractors. I mean, the richest counties in America tend to be DC suburban counties.
Look, it's defense contractors, it's lobbyists. I mean, we made war big business. We've been in endless war for 20 years, and who's profited besides defense contractors? Oh, I know who's made money off of it. People like Nancy Pelosi.
Or Dick Cheney and Halliburton. I mean, this whole thing was...
Yeah, George Bush. It's absolutely insane that 20 years of endless war gave us a billionaire ruling political elite class.
I know, but that's why, Brian, what I noticed from people is a lot of people feel like the world's dark, and you have to offer them hope right now. Because I also feel like people want the opposite. Like, people shut down when just doing different group talks these last year or so. I really noticed because also keep in mind, these social media platforms, they reward the fringe and they just focus on the negative. A newspaper had to sell to both sides of the aisle. They tend to highlight community. Check out this new cool thing. You know what I mean? These platforms, they just make you angry. They did. Well,
they monetize the tension.
Yes.
It's like food scientists spend billions of dollars a year to make that food more palatable. I mean, without saying it, more addictive. Because if it's just taste so awesome and it's creamy and flavorful and delicious and lights up pleasure centers in your brain, that's kind of addiction behavior.
Yeah.
But they engineer it for that reason, because they want to keep your business, they want to keep harvesting you for money, and they want to keep their job and put food on their table.
But that's what I've noticed, though, is no political parties articulated a positive vision for the food system or even for real America. You know, the unsaid thing is move to the urban center.
Yeah, move to the urban center, get big or get out, and we'll find a way to make the food.
So, that's why
no political party wants to address the labor economics of food, because current food production system is basically predicated on exploited labor and exploited environments. And neither political party wants to address that, because in order to address it, they have to open a giant can of worms.
That's why, honestly, that's why I realized writing my Driscoll chapter, my Buried Baron, is most of it with these trade agreements. I think people don't realize it's a race to the bottom. It's like a t-shirt. It's like what happened in manufacturing is you can't compete on price when someone's paying someone $12 a day and you have to pay them with the regulations here, 12, whatever an hour. On top of it, they're using shoulder and they're using chemicals they shouldn't. I mean, you just don't know. Like when supply chains get long, transparency collapses. And it's I don't know, this is so stupid, but the one that really caught my eye and let me down this wormhole was apple juice, where Christian Science Monitor had a story 15 years ago. 70% of apple juice in America comes from China.
Yeah.
Which is, first of all, like,
bonkers.
Grandpa has a little orchard. Apples pretty much grow in every state. They're not hard. Like, they're not like sugarcane. You're not like, they have a broad production region. And the thing though with China is it's labor. That's the biggest cost of apple production. And it's somehow cheaper to pay someone labor halfway around the world to do it. And then I also just noticed it growing up in Iowa, all the apple orchards that we went to were gone. And it wasn't like they're suburban homes. There's just more corn. And you realize, these systems, these people weren't playing on a level playing field against a country that's willing to enslave its own population to concentration camps. I mean, China is a fascist state. I really do believe that. That's how we are where we are. You're right. I mean, people doing it right, you can only run uphill for so long. And then I think what people don't realize in urban areas is people blame themselves for their failure. Like I noticed that within the hog industry in Iowa, most people don't realize how structural it was. Like you were designed to fail. And the fact that you lasted as long as you did was because of your work ethic. But you can only do it for so long. Like, I honestly just want to level the playing field. I mean, that said, that's why I've been focusing on the positive. It's just people need that inspiration what the system could be so they can rush the gates and demand the change they want. But also then they just give up. And then when you give up, the robber barons win.
So what does change look like? What does hope look like?
So besides animals on the land, and then I think using schools to really drive that procurement change. I'm a fan of junking the farm bill.
What if we just junked every 3 and 4 letter agency and started over?
No, because I do think you do need like some research going on at USDA, like researching the bird flu stuff right now, get a vaccine. You know what I mean? You do need some of that kind of stuff. But I part of it is Congress just doesn't work anymore. It's just, the farm bill is breaking down in front of us. I don't think people realize it. I mean, they're going to try to ram it through the lame duck, but it's becoming so gluttonous. Even Republicans don't want to pass crop insurance.
Well, it's 75 to 80% of it is SNAP.
Yeah, that's a whole, it's a wage subsidy. It's a low, the fact most Walmart, I think I have an estimate in my book. It's like $20 billion a year SNAP money runs through Walmart's thing is not only do a large portion of Walmart's customer base need SNAP, but also a large portion of Walmart's workforce. So the world's one of the largest private employers in America, richest family, also needs a massive wage subsidy. Just feels so morally wrong.
Okay. What if we changed what you could buy with SNAP benefits? What if we rolled those rules back like 15 years and you couldn't buy ultra processed food? You couldn't buy sugary drinks. You couldn't buy fucking potato chips and fudge rounds with SNAP benefits anymore. You had to buy real food. You had to buy things like rice, beans, bread, meat, flour. That's what SNAP benefits should be paid for. Fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, meat, and ingredients. No more processed food. Because when we're using SNAP benefits to pay for processed food, none of that money benefits a farmer. All that money goes to the food processor that's feeding you crap.
So I'll come to answer your question in just a second. There's this Italian phrase I love called politics of the artichoke, where it literally means like if you're eating an artichoke, you eat one leaf at a time. You have to take your enemies off one at a time. You can't be at war at all fronts. My big enemy now is JBS. The slaughtering barons. I agree with you, but that is not the hill I want to die on. Do you know what I mean? You start talking about that, people start, because thing to keep in mind too, a lot of people on SNAP, it's a single mom with 2 jobs. She's had a long day. She just wants something quick and easy. I get it.
She's just trying to keep food on her table.
So like real meal takes time and she doesn't have the income. So I agree with you. But to me, I think you got to, especially with robber barons, you got to focus your energies. I rather go after take out the easy one. The easy one is the slaughtering ones. That to me is how the most uniquely bipartisan coalition in America right now. And then you work your way down, then you tackle SNAP. But you're right. I've worked at a grocery store. It was in a lower income area. I see what people buy, but I don't know. I can agree with you, but it's like not where I spend my political capital, if that makes sense for my time.
Oh, I agree with that. There's other things to scream about and worry about, but it just really does bother me that, for the first time in human history, we have such an absurd and obscene amount of wealth that we have people that are living in, quote, poverty that are obese. That has never happened at any other point in human history on this planet, that people that were in abject poverty were obese.
You're so right. And it used to be the opposite. The rich were the obese.
That was the sign of being wealthy, was being fat, because you could afford to eat a lot of rich food.
And they flipped. The biggest marker of class now in America is your waistline. And I think Ozempic will only intensify it. The largest use of it now is on the Upper East Side of New York. Just people want to lose 5 pounds. But I think the weight stuff. Just wait
till side effects from Ozempic start affecting people.
The obesity stuff was the hardest stuff for me to write about because people bring so much personal stuff to it. but I really realize it's structural. You need money to eat healthy in America, and it's I got to be careful here because I don't want to
money, or you need time and land to grow your own food.
Well, if you really want to talk about history too, countries usually fall when the poor don't have any food.
Yeah,
overweight people aren't going to riot now. You know what I mean? There's a weird.
Fat people don't riot.
It's a weird. I think it's really impacted our culture more than people realize. And then, I mean, my a lot of people in my family deal with weight issues, and it makes you more lethargic. It's harder to like go socialize, go do all that stuff. It's just, I mean, bad food just, I mean, it drains me. It slows me down. Like, sure, it might give me that instant high, but the next day I'm just like, ah.
You talked about gluten sensitivity earlier. I think I've developed a palm oil sensitivity. If I go to Pizza Hut, I used to really like Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
I can't eat anything there anymore. Like less than an hour and I got to find a bathroom. It's been kind of hit or miss the last few years. Been able to eat, go to a restaurant and eat. Well, the places that fry their stuff in cheap oil or use cheap oil in their cooking, can't eat there. I just can't eat there. Like Five Guys, they fry their French fries in peanut oil. No problem.
Yeah, I love Five Guys. That was like I love their burger.
Yeah, I love how they put like you go in there and they have the potatoes in the lobby and they have the sign on the wall. See, we get our potatoes. Mm-hmm. They have like 3 potato suppliers and they're potato barons basically, but it's kind of nice. I wish they'd do the same with their beef. Like this beef that we have today was processed at this Cargill plant and it came out of these 3 feedlots. Oh, we can't do that because there's absolutely no traceability in our food system.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys have this down in Kansas, but Quick Trip.
Quick Shop, yeah.
The ones in Iowa, I call them Sin Cities because you walk in them. They're basically restaurants now. There's so much food options, but like, it's not the healthiest food. I mean, I'm doing the book tour. You're moving a mile a minute. I had chicken strips because, why not? It's been a long day.
It's just, just on the road.
Yes. That is the funny part. It's, I ended up like beef sticks are like my go-to. Like you just have to like learn your little cheats. That said, that's like, look at that. I'm in Iowa. This is the world's best soil. Yeah, it's one of the most obese states, and it's just full of junk food. Like none of the food, by the way, none of the food's from Iowa. That's why I realized the diners in Iowa. That's what got me into like studying Cisco and all that. You're like, I'm surrounded by the world's best farmland, but none of the food on my table is from here.
I've said that a lot. Like, why are we trying to focus on feeding the world? What are we feeding the world? Commodities? Nobody in the world eats number 2 dent corn. Very few people eat soybeans like are commercially grown on vast scale. We're not feeding the world. We're not even feeding our communities. It's madness that all of our food has hundreds of miles on it.
Yeah, the most of those people saying that are also the same people who love ethanol. So if you can't burn corn in your car and feed the world at the same time, you got to pick one. That's honestly, I don't think this has been underappreciated. Is like what the Ukraine war means for us in terms of food. You have an old-fashioned European land war. That's a massive amount of land being taken out of production. So you're naturally going to see grocery store prices rise. At the same time, we're doubling down on ethanol. Like you're taking more land out of production. Like it's so clearly contributing to higher grocery store prices, but we're not. You know what I mean? Like that to me is
it's going to
no one's talking about
corn, which is going to
increase the price of beef.
Encourage farmers to break out more land, break out CRP.
Yep.
Tear down that windrow, farm that road ditch, farm up that waterway, just so we can get a few more bushels of this really high priced corn and cash in. But then when the price falls, instead of putting that land back into CRP, back into waterways, no, it stays in corn. And now the price of corn is down. We got to have more price support. We got to have more subsidies. That farm bill safety net It's not a safety net. It is a comfortable hammock for most producers to simply lie in and collect their check.
It's at the same time too, though. A lot of countries are rejecting our system. I mean, you have Mexico rejecting our corn, Canada's rejecting our dairy. They see what this done. They see what they don't want to. They see it and they're like, we don't want this. We don't want to.
I think it's absolutely insane. Mexico said, we don't want GMO corn, and we are suing them to make them buy GMO corn. They'll buy corn. They just don't want GMO. And we're suing them to force them to buy GMO corn. That's insane.
That's what happens when you get a former dairy lobbyist as a secretary. I mean, he's a lobbyist that wants to be a lobbyist again. That's all that's going on there. It's sad. It's like really sad.
What are we going to do about
it? You should put together a list for political appointees. I mean, I always, Bill Ballard of RCAP is one of my favorite people. Put him in a powerful position. We got to demand. I go back. No one's going to give you a seat at the table. You need to fight for it. You don't know. Writing a good report's not going to change anything. Meeting with a dairy lobbyist, telling them to do the right thing, they're not going to do the right thing. You just have to accept that and understand this is power politics. What's blowing my mind is actually how quiet a lot of the senators from the Great Plains have been. I mean, I kind of view the beef farmer as like the last man standing in meat and dairy production.
What? Wait a minute. What do you mean the senators have been quiet? Like my senators? What's his name? Pat Roberts?
Didn't he retire? Isn't there a new one now?
Jerry Moran?
What are they doing for beef farmers?
That's an interesting question. And it really depends on how you define beef farmers. If you define beef farmers as guys like me with cow, calf, land, grass, a ranch, grazing cattle outside under the sunshine, okay, that's one way. You can also define that as all the background lots where the yearling calves go and all the feed lots. So if the feedlots and the backgrounders are the ones that contribute more to your campaign, who's a beef rancher? Not guys like me, because I won't give Jerry Moran $5 because I don't support him, because he doesn't support me. The policies, the stuff he's voted for since he's been in the Senate, do not support me. I do not agree with him. The man's even been on my ranch, and I've told him this. Like I had Mike Pompeo here too in 2016.
That's funny. I mean, it blows people's minds, but some people don't want to hear it. But like the person who had the balls to actually say break up the companies was Elizabeth Warren.
I had executives. Like I can't mention names, but I had the leadership team from Burger King and Cargill on the ranch a year ago.
That's wild.
And I got an open platform to rant for an hour and a half. And believe me, I told them what I thought. And
that's really funny.
They didn't seem to have a clue. Like, I was talking about my cows and the grass and rotating the cows and the difference between, that and the feedlot system. And it's like, I was starting to get the impression that these people had never even seen one of their own operations. Like they'd never really been, okay, maybe they've been to the feedlot, to the office, not out in the trenches, not seeing what goes on every day, not seeing how those animals are treated every day and what we've done to animal welfare in the name of corporate profits.
Yes.
Like the sacrifices in animal welfare and animal husbandry that we have made for the name of corporate profits for the sake of feeding the world.
That's what I tell people. Besides buying from people doing it right, using your own money to do that, the second best thing you can do for those people is pair them up with their local school. Help them. There's only so much you can do in a day. You helping them, because it's hard to be in sales and be a farmer and do all this stuff. But you sit there and you tell your school district, I want you to buy your beef from this person. That's a good contract for you, the people doing it right. Because you want to grow and stabilize these people instead of having them, they can't put it all on their backs. I mean, that's, if you really care about this stuff, stop using your fork to change the system. You got to put in some work too.
Well, I don't want my school district to buy all of their meat from me. I don't want my school district to buy all their meat from my neighbor. I want them to buy some of it from me. I want them to buy
Exactly.
some of it from my neighbor. And I want them to buy some of it from the guy on the other end of the county that I don't know. Because we all need to be able to participate in the food system. I mean, we're all stakeholders in the food system. You got to eat at least once a day. Most people eat 3-4 times a day. You don't ever need a doctor. You don't daily need the doctor or a lawyer. You daily need a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to rebuild that connection between consumers and producers. Got to get rid of some of these layers of concentration and monopoly that put so many barriers between the consumer and the producer that there's no accountability.
The other thing too, that I think been lost is how much local producers, local businesses, local restaurants maintain culture. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So much of this era, this homogenization, it loses that. I mean, I saw that with my mom's bakery. I mean, and my family's part Czech, and like for our wedding, instead of doing wedding cake, we did kolaches. And it was a local restaurant that did it. You know, the Walmart's not gonna bakery's not gonna do kolaches.
The same guys that would go down to the coffee shop or the burger joint and sit there all day and drink coffee, they're not going to go do that at Applebee's. Applebee's doesn't want them there. The manager might not care that they're there, be pretty ambivalent about it, but he's not going to go sit there and talk to those guys and be like, hey, how you guys doing? And get to know them. Like the owner of a small town restaurant would.
And the small town restaurant's they're going to donate the gift certificates to the school district fundraiser. They're going to donate. You know what I mean? They're going to, even locally owned businesses.
Team.
Yeah. And like
they're going to put money in the athletic booster club for the high school. Walmart doesn't do that. Casey's, Dollar General, they do not do that. You know, Walmart killed Main Street. Dollar General showed up, picked the bones of what was left.
You know what's funny? Walmart tried to make a version of Dollar General, and it could even be that ruthless.
I mean, Walmart's not that bad.
Oh, I mean, Brian, I was reading the build out cost for a new Dollar General is $300,000. Like they've bare boned that thing so much. For context, New Whole Foods, this might be an old stat, it was like $10 million, I heard. These things are like, you just look at them and it's, I mean, I pop into one here and there, and you just feel sorry for the worker because they give them such low hourly stuff. But like the aisles are just full of crap. You know, it feels like you're in a developing country trying to find like, you know, Windex.
And that's a good point. Walking into a Dollar General does not feel like walking into an American store. It almost feels like a third world experience. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's great. Dollar General moved into town. There's going to be 5 part-time jobs and a manager job. Great. But we haven't seen what we've lost in order to get that. We lose more than we gain in a situation like that. And it's been a long-term slow loss, and then we get a short-term gain for more long-term pain in the community. Because we have a Dollar General, we have a Walmart, and they're going to continue to grow, and they want to grow their share in the marketplace in a shrinking community, which means less to go around for the people that have already been there on Main Street that are struggling to make a living. You know, and it's the same story all across the plains. You know, people are aging out. There's a lot of people that are aging out of grocery stores, out of small town restaurants, out of small businesses. And they're not getting replaced by other small businesses. They're getting replaced by Walmart and Dollar General.
And they're just, people want to live in, like, I know a lot of young people that want to live in these communities. I mean, especially in like the Midwest, a lot of these small towns have beautiful old homes, beautiful brick downtowns. I mean, most of these suburbs in America are just so soulless and poorly built, strip mall-y. But you're right, these communities almost become extraction colonies is the way I look at it. They're producing the most wealth they've ever produced, but none of that money stays there. So the wages are just so low. Kids can't afford to live near their parents. And so they have to either move to the city because you have a lot of student loan debt to take some job that pays a little bit more, but then you find someone to love, you get married, and then, you know what I mean? You start going too far down that path. And also, how can, even if you want to go back to the land, how can you buy farmland when you're competing against Bill Gates? Like you're going to be outbid every time. I mean, that is, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm mulling maybe doing another, who knows what I'm going to do next. But there's like two things I didn't talk about that I want to talk about. And one is land access. I didn't really appreciate the barriers people face. And also labeling. I mean, I personally think the organic label doesn't mean much anymore, but I usually don't tell people that because I don't, there's, you know what I mean? Organic label, you have a lot of people doing it right who depend on that. At the same time too, when I see something from Turkey and it says organic, I just know it's usually probably fraud because fraud is so rampant there.
I was gonna say there's a lot of fraud with the organic.
Yeah, there's a lot of fraud. And so like, I mean, I had a farmer call me out, the beef farmer in Iowa, for saying, I publicly told people I don't really think of the organic label means much. And she's like, I know you're right, but sometimes you can't let you and I, but like, she's like, you and I know USDA is failing to make the label mean something, but consumers still think it does a little bit. And like, we can't, she's like, that's all I have right now is my normal beef markets are so broken. I need to be able to sell into that market. And if I lose that, then I'm screwed. So like, you know what I mean? It's,
And
the stuff is,
she's just trying to put food on her table.
yes, she's trying to
keep family fed.
Not even that. She's just trying to barely keep her head above water, because this is what she loves. This is her life. This is her. Yeah, I don't know. And here's the thing: it's not hard to do. It's not hard to make these labels mean something. You know.
Yeah. Okay, I want to circle back to your land access comment.
Yeah.
And yes, I agree with you that land access needs to be improved. I think that if we want to build a better food system in the future, we need to have more people on smaller acreage working the land rather than get big, get out, and continue down this path of mechanization and consolidation and everybody being hyper efficient and only growing what grows absolute best in your area. I mean, you live in Iowa, I live in Kansas. I remember there being other crops grown in the world other than corn, soybeans, cotton, wheat, and feed.
Yeah.
That seems like those are the four crops. Those are the only four crops in the world anymore. Corn, wheat, soybeans, cotton, I guess, and sorghum sedan based, feed hay for cows. Right? So that's 5. Maybe alfalfa if you want to go 6. There's like 6 things grown. And crap, I forgot what I was going to say. We're not growing anything.
No, but here's the thing. I actually, 2 years ago, I got old plat books. I was actually personally curious. My family used to have land. Because no joke, my family, when they came from Ireland to Iowa, it was right near where the Cargill family started Cargill, like literally 12 miles away. I was looking at plat books and you're like, oh, land's actually not as consolidated as I thought it was in Iowa because first of all, the prices are insane. So it hinders consolidation. But what's going on is a disconnect between those who farm and those who own it, where most farmland now in Iowa is actually owned by non-Iowans. Grandma, grandpa die, kids move to LA, and then they rent it out. And like, here's the thing, that renter, they're barely getting by. They're trying to make their numbers. They're going to push the land. And these kids don't know anything about it. And so, I mean, I can always clock it when I drive. I can tell right away which land's rented and which land's not by the way it's treated.
And that's, I think that's where I was going. So my dad did a similar plat book study here in Barber County. Okay. 40% of the land in Barber County is owned by people that don't live in this county. And most of that land has been taken out of some sort of agricultural production and is basically a deer hunting preserve.
Yeah. I mean, that's Southern Iowa.
When there is a property, like it's literally between my house and my ranch. Well, not literally, it's kind of off the side. It traded for $3,000 an acre. Austin, it's cedar trees and hills without fence around it, a couple of food plots and a couple of deer feeders. And they had some pictures of when, the last seller bought it. They had some pictures from when they first bought it of the deer that were on there. Like, so they're selling it 7 years later for over 3 times what they paid for it, using 7-year-old pictures of deer. Now, I'm not saying they didn't have any recent pictures. I'm not saying they didn't put any recent pictures. I'm just saying that I saw the dates on some of them and they were pretty old. With property like that, that's not viable use for agriculture, trades for $3,000 an acre. Okay. I look at it and be like, I'd have to put 50 grand into that in fence just to get a solid perimeter around it. And then I'd have to put in another $1,000 to $1,500 an acre to go cut the trees off of it so I could actually see it and maybe have a chance of growing some grass and put some cows out there. That's the same situation you guys are in Iowa, $25,000 an acre farmland. There's no way that pencils out.
No.
Zero way that pencils out. And so here, back to the land access, right? And I say this often. I wear 3 hats in my operation. I'm the owner, I'm the manager, and I'm the labor. So if ownership wants management to do something, it gets done. I don't need to have 5 production meetings about it and have a plan, right? Ownership makes the plan. I tell management tells labor, and it happens. And I'm one guy. When you've got a situation like you described, where that land has been in the family for 5-6 generations, and now because of the way trust and inheritances and wills have been written, you have 53 people, each with an equal undivided interest in that land, or some similar weird situation, right? Where they're completely disconnected, have been disconnected for generations. They don't have to see the consequences of the management. They're removed from the consequences of the management of that land. The manager is removed from the long-term consequences of ownership and the ramifications of their actions. Because if it gets bad enough, then you just be like, yeah, I don't want to rent this anymore. You can have it back. And to your point, so in a situation like that, where you have an absentee landowner that doesn't understand, they look at a spreadsheet, they just want to see more money coming in. They want to, they got to have their profit. They got to have their money. They got to have their rent check, because, that's part of them being able to keep food on their table and be able to feed their family, right? They want their rent check. The guy that's farming it, probably on leased machinery from John Deere, a couple $1 million underwater on an operating note, driving a brand new pickup and brand new machinery. Does this sound familiar? He's detached from the long-term consequences of his management actions on that land. And he's motivated for short-term returns to maximize his return and minimize his investment, because that's what makes most sense for him, right? But those two goals, they get in conflict. When you have ownership decide they want to change their mind and be like, this whole soil and environmentally destructive system we're in that just feeds this big commodity machine, that just feeds big corporate profits, that I'm not benefiting. I want to do something different. So when you wear all 3 hats, getting that change is easy.
Yeah.
Like doing something like, okay, we're going to go from straight corn to we're going to no-till corn, beans, and we're going to put some pollinators out here. We're going to do all this other stuff. If you're just a tenant farmer, why would you do that? If it might bring you a little less profit, you wouldn't. You got to stay in that system that you know. You got to stay with what works. You got to keep using that formula that you learned in land-grant university, that your crop consultant and your seed salesman and your fertilizer salesman are telling you got to use to raise this crop, that your co-op is telling you they're going to buy from you. Bottom line, we got to put more people back on the land, and we've got to give them ownership. Maybe not ownership. Maybe ownership is the wrong concept. Maybe we need to have a conversation about what ownership and stewardship of land assets mean. Because ownership versus stewardship are 2 different concepts. I do not own my ranch. My ranch owns me, and I am privileged to be its steward for the time that I am here. It is a burden.
Honestly, after that, I really encourage you to do public service one day. I know you. Here's the thing. Things change when people like you get into positions of power. No one's gonna. I don't know. I just say that because everything you just said right there. First of all, that last sentence was just like, as a writer, rhetorical gold. It was great prose. There's something so that's like, I don't know, I want to live in that world. I feel like most people do. And be the change you want to see. And like, I mean, this might sound a little tinfoil hatty. I don't think we really grappled with what a decade of 0% interest rates has really done to us, because it's just turbocharged inequality. I mean, it's insane. I mean, like the fact that an AI company is now worth more than Canada, you're just like, okay, this is. We know how this story goes.
When you call this shit out, when you say, hey, this is what's going to happen 10 years down the line if we do this, people are like, no, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. Shut up. We've got to do this.
Sometimes you just got to trust your gut and beat to your own drum. I mean, to me, it is, I think getting older, one of the beauties is learning your gut. Like, you know what I mean? Like the biggest fuck ups in my life have always been when I didn't listen to myself. I'll be honest.
Not trusting my intuition has gotten me into way more trouble than trusting it has.
I mean, God, I mean, even doing this book, I mean, I was told by the book world that this was too academic-y. People don't want to read this. They want fluffy, bougie, elite restaurant stuff. And even my cover, I got into a big fight with my publisher on my cover. And I was like, no, people get it. I wanted like a Teddy Roosevelt style cover. You just got to trust your gut, because in the day you have to live with yourself.
Listening to you kind of go through that made me think about some of my struggles with social media in the last year. You know, when the economy really started to get bad, a little like 18 months ago, it seemed like all the social media companies changed the algorithm and went to more and more ads supported and sponsored content.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of developed, like you either had to go do viral content, go figure out how to make viral content that's, you know, sensational, is going to cause outrage, get people to watch it, or you had to pay for views.
Yes.
I mean, I get it. Facebook's in business to make money.
Yeah.
And when the economy started to get bad and interest rates started to rise and free money started to dry up, they all panicked and were like, we need to mine our users for data streams. There was a time I was scrolling Facebook, and I think this was February, March 23. And it literally 3 out of 4 things on my feed were sponsored or promoted. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, how am I going to promote anything? How am I going to get any word out? Spend thousands of dollars on ads to try to reach more people. And I guess I kind of got a little off my game, and
No, but it's like being on a hamster wheel, though. I mean, an influencer is just a glorified version of QVC. You're just trying to sell product at the end of the day, and you're not controlling.
I'm not trying to sell anything.
Yeah, but that's why I personally, I moved away word of mouth. This book has been the best thing I can do in the book. If you enjoy something, you say it's no different than when I recommend a farm or a restaurant to someone. That matters anything more than any sponsor content thing. You just have to trust it. You have to trust a quality product, because we live in an era of too much content, too much information, too much whatever. Word of mouth is everything. It means so much more now. So like that to me is like, honestly, like, thank you for having me on today and like saying good things about the book. I really do appreciate that. But that's why I tell other people, if you like something, let people know. I mean, I love telling people my favorite like pork producer. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, you mentioned our friend Greg Gunthorpe.
Yeah.
Been on the podcast. We have a Discord server, which you'll be getting an email invite to here shortly. Greg's pretty active on there. We talk pretty often. So I want to invite you.
I met Greg in Kansas. I mean, we order a turkey from him every year. I mean, Greg is here. I got to tell you a quick Greg story. We were at some conference in Kansas City, and I didn't know this at the time. He did the beat for the conference, and I was looking at these chicken wings. I was like, I've never seen a wing this big. And Greg was behind me. He explained to me, oh, we've engineered chickens that have big breasts, and so we've shrunk their wings. And he's like, they used to have much bigger wings. So he has the old version, like the old what chickens used to be. And I was like, this is so much better.
Cornish cross chickens. Have you grown chickens lately?
No, I don't eat that much chicken anymore.
Dude, I'm telling you, like we just finished a run of Cornish crosses. 8 weeks. It is absolutely insane how fast they grow if you just let them stand in a pen and give them unlimited feed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you turn them outside, if you open the door, they'll just stand there. Like most of them will just stand there and they'll want to go back in because that's where their crack is. And they can't fly. So we've got, I think we're down to like 7 chickens right now. We have several of them that actually can fly. And we're talking like, 3.5, like a little 2.5, 3 pound bird. They're not going to yield a lot of meat. They also don't eat a hell of a lot and they make eggs. But watching, I guess I don't really know how to say it. But
well, let me this is a really good way to end this is chickens. So like before I let your audience go is I kind of blame chickens for everything now in the food system. As weird as that sounds, because when Teddy Roosevelt, when he wrote that regulations a century ago, they didn't write chicken to the regulations because there weren't commercial chicken slaughterhouses. You just butchered a chicken in your backyard.
Yeah. And
so what happened in the South is these corporations took that sharecropping model that was applied to black farmers and applied it to chicken. And then what happened is instead of making chicken behave like the other meats, you gained a ton of market share because it's a really exploitive model. They call it chickenization, where pork got chickenized, and then Driscoll's applied that to berries. So like the thing is we just stop. Why are we doing sharecropping? Are you a farmer or are you a sharecropper? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I kind of joke that, you know what I mean? It all goes back to chicken.
It does. It does. That was another great book, Christopher Leonard's Meat Rock.
Yep. That's why I didn't touch Tyson's as a bear in my book. I was like, Chris wrote the definitive book on that.
Yeah, he covered those guys pretty well. And it's interesting that that's how Packers and Stockyards was written. Was like they specifically excluded chicken because nobody figured out how to mass produce chickens. Like that wasn't a thing. There were too variable. And then we get the Cornish cross, and John Tyson figures out that he can make more money selling the feed than selling the birds. And then he's like, oh, well, if I own the whole thing and control all the production, then I make all the money. And these people are just basically.
But he contracted out the riskiest part. The least profitable part is actually growing the bird. So then he shifted on to these farmers, and he did everything else. I mean, I think it says so much too that I think like the most American food right now is chicken fingers. And like, here's the thing. This industrial chicken doesn't have any taste. It's kind of awful. But if you put it in breading and fry it, you know what I mean? You're hiding kind of the low quality of the product.
Yep. Well, that's what food science is. It's hiding the low quality of the product behind palatability and flavor.
And that is what's fascinating about the whole chain restaurant thing right now is chickens is doing blockbuster numbers, and then you have beef kind of collapsing. What's the cattle herd is at 1950 levels now?
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to several people about that, and the school of thought on that goes from one extreme to the other. That one end is it's catastrophic and the cow herd's imploding, and the other one is, oh, it'll be fine. We've been here before and we can rebuild. So I'm not real sure. I think that where I'm at, my niche, I'm pretty safe. And the parallels between like chickenization, between the chicken industry and pork industry is, the common denominator is when there's a part of the system that the monopoly can't control, those uncontrollable cost of production, they simply ignore that part and make other people do that.
Yes.
So like raising the cows, keeping the cows, that's not very profitable for a meat packer to do. Like there's very little profit in cows for a meat packer. The profit is all in the slaughter animals and keeping those rolling through at a very consistent size and a consistent shape. So the cutters have less work and have to adapt less. Makes sense. Efficient production. But that just doesn't leave a whole lot of room for an independent producer. And they want everything at scale. And I lost my train of thought again.
No, I would just add on the second they can eliminate the risk, though, they'll internalize it.
Yeah.
So like, kind of the weird, funny thing about writing a book like this is people always love to tell me which barons I missed. Or like, if I'm in Minnesota, they're like, let me tell you about a potato baron. If I'm in Indiana, they tell me about a carrot baron. There's an egg baron. Cal, Maine sells like 1 in 5 eggs, and they're fully vertically integrated because they figure out how to do industrial egg production. I don't know. It says so much about where we are. What used to be, here's the thing though, when you become just one thing, you're fragile.
Yes.
The family farm was a diversified retirement portfolio. So one market creator, you can shift, and you can shift things around. And that's why when something hits, I don't know, take COVID in pigs. When the slaughterhouses shut down, that system, just letting the pigs just stay on the farm a few more months till things came back to normal, the system was breaking, or like it just couldn't handle like a little stoppage. The one that scared me the most personally was when a hurricane hit Puerto Rico. Most IV solution America was made in Puerto Rico, and you're like, you can't lose that. That system went down. And there's a great book. I'm looking at my shelf. It's called Red Famine. How basically the Soviet Union broke Ukraine's family farm system to do that collectivism, and induced a massive famine, killed millions of people because people were no longer sustainable. And you just got to be careful. You just don't want. At my core, I don't like concentrations of power, either if it's politics or economics. The more local you can get things, the more stable the system is.
Well, concentrated power corrupts.
Yeah. It's the tale all this time. It's never forget the goal of any corporate executive is monopoly. So you're always going to have that tension because that's where profits are. It's concentrated markets gouge. That's what they do. And we're just this is the world we live in right now.
Well, I hope we can work for a better system in the future. Great discussion today. What?
Yeah, we've been all over. It's like a little bit of dark, a little bit of hope, and a little bit of everything, Brian.
Welcome to Ranching Reboot.
No, I know. Well, also welcome to agriculture. You gotta. Yeah. I joke to someone. I'm like the biggest mix of idealism and cynicism.
It is a funny mix sometimes.
It isn't, because here's the thing. The last thing I'll say to your listeners: you see what the system could be. That both what pisses me off like no other, but also like keeps me going is like, I always say everything is about Iowa, but like Iowa should be Italy of North America. You know what I mean? Like these small towns are so healthy and good, or like they have good cores. This is what I see what the system could be, and I see people trying to do the right thing. How do I grow that? How do we copy and paste people like you? That's the hope. But you just see how entrenched the current system is.
Yeah. And I hope in the future that we get more people returning to the land and wanting to be homesteaders and involved in their food production. So, All right. Where can people find you on the internet? How can they connect with you? Where do you want to send traffic? Social?
Yeah. All my socials, all that stuff. Austin Frerick, Frerick. Check out my book. I would really appreciate it. And I would love your audience to know. Let me know what you think, what I missed. I always love getting those emails. And I will say, so I have 1,000, the book's only 200 pages, but I have 1,000 footnotes. Because if you're going to write a book like this, you cross your T's, you dot your I's. That said, to my knowledge, there's only one mistake in the book and it's like the first page. I call Eldora, Iowa, El Dorado, which I thought was but yeah. So like, let me know, people. It's, word of mouth is everything for something like this. Cause I'm also pretty stubborn. And so it's been fun to kind of prove the book roll wrong on something like this. Cause what's funny is this book's selling really well in airports.
Really?
A lot of business travel. Yeah. Because business travelers, they go abroad and they see, they go to Europe and they're like, I had better food. It was cheaper and I lost weight. You know what I mean? Like they're seeing it.
And they might be looking for that. The audiobook took, I think, just under 7 hours.
Yeah. And that was very much intentional. I didn't want, you're saying you're busy, you're working a lot. And also, I think iPhones have made our attention span shorter. So I just want to get to the point, I want to tell you, here's what's important. And also I feel like when you travel, airport food's just garbage. You truly are paying insane prices for garbage.
It's kind of the worst of the worst.
Yes.
You don't have a choice. For me to go anywhere, I've got to go through like Denver, Dallas, Chicago, major hub. Like there's no direct flights unless I'm going to a hub. And not that I travel a lot, but if you've got 3 hours to kill in Denver during the middle of the day, yeah, I'm going to go find the Wendy's.
Here's the thing, Wendy's is owned by private equity. I used to love Wendy's. My mom and I would always use the taco salad, and it's just garbage now. I have a whole thing about private equity. If you can't tell, that just drives me nuts.
And we'd probably have a lot of common ground on that one, but we need to get going.
Yeah, thanks again. Thanks again, Brian. You take care now.
Yep, it's been a lot of fun, Austin. Thank you, and gang, have a great week. See ya.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. Don't forget to like and follow me on social media at Red Hills Rancher, pretty much on every platform. Video versions of the podcast are available on YouTube, Spotify, and many other players. You can always submit guest suggestions through the contact form on my website, redhillsrancher.com. You come chat with me and other podcast fans, previous guests on our Discord server. There's a link in the show notes, and there's also a link on my link tree. And lastly, if you found this podcast episode to be educational, enlightening, or even just entertaining, please do me a huge favor and share the podcast with your friends. Leave your review on Apple. And thanks again. We'll see you next week.